Hello, my name is Bob Wood. The family lives on 88 Highway, or did live there, but the home farm was on number 11, between the 10th and the 11th, and it goes to Colson's Hill. The Wood family history started in 1846 to present. Robert Wood and John Wood came to Canada in 1846. They came from Cavan, Ireland. This journey was the beginning of a 179 year to date in Township of West Gwillimbury. They settled in Colson's Hill, Hamlet, Highway 11, Concession 11, and was able to work at Mackey Sawmill, which was located on the 9th Concession, Lot 14, North Half. Robert was in charge of daily operations. In 1849, Robert married Suzanne Fennell, and John married Frances Fennell. In 1853, two brothers married two sisters. In 1851, Robert and Suzanne bought 200 acres, Concession 10, South Half, and the North Half of Lot 15. They raised a family of 9. Sadly, in 1869, Susanna died at Christmas just a few months after the birth of Elizabeth Jane. With the help of family and neighbors, friends, Robert soon secured the help of a housekeeper by Mrs. Rebecca Wagner. By 1872, Robert remarried Maria Thompson, 1837 to 1917. She was 80, of Tecumseh Township. They had 2 children. Robert remained on his farm, which he named Lornwood, until he died in 1904. The family was very active in St. Paul's Anglican Church, Colson's Hill. They were famous for their hospitality, and especially for the wonderful garden parties given in the beautiful lawn for the benefit of the church. Robert donated land, and Joseph Fennell provided the lumber for an orange lodge in Colson's Hill. The lodge was built in 1856 by the members of the Colson families, including the Woods, the Fennells, the Evanses, the Nishaws, the Glovers, and Andrews families. By early 1905, John and Robert's 4 sons had purchased 900 acres in the township of West Gwillimbury. Robert's family, number 1, was William, married Henrietta Fawcett in 1885. They had no children. William was very active in the township as councillor, Reeve, from 1901 to 1940, and then warden of Simcoe County in 1914. For his service to the county, he was presented a gold pocket watch, which still remains in the Wood family today. James married Mary Jane Armstrong. They farmed Concession 7, North Half, Lot 14. They had 2 children. James Franklin was called Frank, and he married Ethel St. Clair, Ken Woods' grandfather. Pearl Gertrude Winifred married Captain George Washington Stoddard. Pearl's great-granddaughter, Jennifer Stoddard, was Canada's Privacy Commissioner from December 1st, 2003 to December 2013. Joseph stayed on the farm until he married Margaret Goodwin of Cookstown. They raised a family of 8, my great-grandfather. Alexander, 1860 to 1875, 15. Died June 24th, 1875, when attending school at the town hall in Bradford. A storm came up and did damages to the town hall, and he was the only tragedy. Jane Ann, called Jenny, never married. Robert H. Jr., 1862 to 1886, 24, died October the 10th, 1886, rheumatic fever. Thomas Albert married Maria Scanlon. They had 5 children. Bertram Thomas, killed in World War I. Walter married Hilda Matheson. Gerald married Stella Loretta. Burl, who became a teacher and was president of the Federation of Women's Teachers in Toronto. And it joined with the Toronto School Board in 1998, and passed away at the age of 95. Byron Joseph was married to Lily MacDonald. Mary Ann, Robert's other daughter, Minnie, married William Morton. They had one child, Margaret. They are buried at the Anglican Church Cemetery in Holland Landing. Elizabeth died at the age of 1. Clarence Herbert Patterson married Lulu Ida Monica Bateman. They had one daughter, Bessie Gertrude. Clarence was a member of the Newton Robinson Orange Lodge. Sadly, Lulu died while Bessie was still a baby. Bessie never married and passed away in 1989. Sarah Elizabeth, 1874 to 1969, played the organ at St. Paul's Anglican Church, Coastlands Hill. Robert's brother, John, married Frances Fennell, and they had 11 children. And the fourth child, Frances Ann Wood, married Robert Ferris. They had 7 children, and they are buried in the odd kirk. The Ferrises of Newmarket and the Ferrises of Cookstown's distant cousins by marriage. Joseph, Robert's third son, married Margaret Goodwin. They raised a family of 8, 5 boys and 3 girls. Joseph's father, Robert, had purchased the property on Concession 7, Lot 5, from the Armstrong family in 1884. Joseph built a large plank barn with a basement in 1893, and 5 years later he and his wife purchased the farm from Robert. In 1904, Joseph also purchased the property on Concession 7, Lot 7, from William's daughter. That same year, suddenly Joseph Wood died. The family continued to farm the Armstrong farm. Margaret sold the second property. Margaret and her 8 children continued to farm. The youngest child was born April the 18th, the same year his father passed. Alexander Goodwin, this is Joseph's children, 1885 to 1945, never married and is buried in Edmonton, Alberta. Susan Elizabeth Cross married William Russell Stone of Beaton. They had no family. Robert Matthew, 1889 to 1968, married Letitia Williams of West Gwillimbury. J. Addison, 1891 to 1973, married Gertrude Sinkler, moved to Saskatchewan. Jean, 1893 to 1935, married Fred Watts of Collingwood, the boat builders of Collingwood. William James, 1897 to 1917, was killed at New Ridge. Doris Francis, 1899 to 1977, married Alexander McKean of West Gwillimbury. No family. They farm on the 4th, south half, Lot 5, where John McCallum now farms. Edward Morton, 1904 to 1970, 66, married Adeline Brown of Schomburg. They started their married life on Concession 4, north half, which is the Low Farm. Alexander Goodwin and William James served in World War I. The Watts family were the first boat builders in Collingwood. The Watts boathouse still stands on the shores of Georgia Bay. Looking at, I think the next slide. Looking at the grain elevators. Fred and Jean's son Reg spent 4 years in the Royal Navy. Upon return to the shipbuilder's yard, becoming foreman, he still dreamed of building his own boat. So Reg had worked at the shipyards for 37 years. So after 34 years of taking time on weekends and holidays, he built a 34-foot steel-hull sailboat. In June of 1985, the FC Watts was christened and launched into the water of Georgian Bay with the help of the shipyard workers. My parents, Joe and Millie, were invited to the launch. They took their granddaughter, Jennifer, our daughter. Sadly to say, Reg died shortly after, and that boat was sold to a dentist in Gravenhurst. Robert Matthew, Joseph's second son. In 1913, Robert rented the family farm from the estate, and his mother and siblings moved to Bond Head. In 1916, Robert married Letitia Williams, the girl down the road.
Yes.
At the Cedars, Ralph and Marilyn Williams' farm. By 1921, when his youngest brother was of legal age, Robert purchased the farm and worked it until he and Letty retired in 1960. Robert and Letitia had 5 children. Next slide, please. Ruth Williams, 1917 to 2005, married Arthur Gordon Shaw of Guilford. Joseph John, 1925 to 1998, my dad, married Mildred Ann Sutton of Schaumburg. Helen Margaret, 1928 to 2017, married Gordon Clare Wells of Calgary. Robert Matthew, 1931 to 2018, married Doris Roberta Cairns of Eaton. William Douglas, 1935 to 1990, married Maria Lenora Brown. And the second wife was Carol May Widona and lived in St. Louis. Grandpa and Grandma had 10 grandchildren. Robert and Letty were members of the Trinity Anglican Church, Mont Head. Letty played the organ at the church until they moved in 1960. Robert was a member of the Newton Robinson Orange Lodge. Grandpa Wood enjoyed maintaining and manicuring the grounds around the farm. In 1960, my grandparents, Robert and Letitia, moved to the house right across from the Newton Robinson Hall. Letty continued to play the organ at St. Luke's Anglican Church on the 11th concession of West Glenbrae. Robert passed away in 1968. Letty passed away in 1973. They are buried in St. John's Cemetery in Cookstown. Joseph John, Robert's first son. Joseph John and Mildred Ann's, my parents, were married in 1949. They started their married life on the 6th line, renting a farm from the Landerkin family, where Duncan and Ann Page now live. William, Robert, and Kenneth were born there. Joe, in his younger years, worked for the Batemans and Len Hickling of Bradford, and Millie was a hairdresser. Bill and I attended the one-room schoolhouse, SS number 3, at the corner of the 6th line and 5 Side Road. The neighboring farms were Westlake's, the Sutherlands, the Culberts, the MacArthurs, the Stoddards, the Cranes, and Jack Ray. In 1960, Joe and Millie purchased the wood farm on 88. They also welcomed Barbara Ann, number 4. They continued mixed farming practices, then over time enlarged the dairy operation with adding a milk house, steel stabling in their barn to house 36 cows. The mud block house was due to have some maintenance, so the exterior was stuccoed, a bathroom, and a furnace were added, then new windows. Joe and Millie family expanded once more when the children started to marry. Bill married Andrea Robinson, first wife. Second, Pat Hart, partner. Bob married Pat Wiley. Kenneth married Linda Van Dyken, first marriage, then Joan Cow. Barbara married Kenneth Burnley. Interesting to say that 3 partners came from Tecumseh Township, Andrea, Pat, and Kenneth. As the families grew, George and Millie were blessed with 9 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren. Joe and Mildred lived at Lot 5, Concession 7 from 1960 to 1986. Joseph and Mildred are buried at St. John's Anglican Church on the 6th of New Tecumseh. Stories from our ancestors make history interesting and funny. Dad's Aunt Fanny and her husband Alec were visiting. Bill and I were wrestling around on the floor. Dad yelled at us to stop, and Fanny says to him, "Leave them alone. The Wood boys have been fighting for 100 years on these floors. Why stop them now?" Joe and Millie's second son was born in 1952. That's me. Just 14 months after their first child, William. Robert attended SS number 3, located at the corner of the 6th concession of 5 Side Road in West Glenbrae. My grade 1 classmates were Denise Muirhead and Marilyn MacArthur. Back then, going to school was riding a bike both ways, except the day I ran into the back of my brother's bike going down the hill and knocked out a few spokes. One of the boys at the school, Jimmy Crane, said he could fix the broken spokes after school. We didn't arrive home after school on time. Mom came to find us on the Massey Harris 30. No dessert that night. One day, coming home from school, we found a jewelry box by Robert Sutherland's mailbox. When we arrived home, we were wearing rings, on our fingers. We took Mom back to where we found the jewelry box. Later we learned that Isaac King's house had been broken into. The snowstorm of 1958, the 6th line was built in so bad they had to cut a roadway across the field so Roy Judge could pick up the milk. In 1960, Joe and Millie bought Grandpa Wood's farm. We moved to Highway 88. At the same time, Central School was started, and guess where they built the school? Right across from Grandpa Wood's farm. So now I just had to walk up the road, not far enough to even miss it. Day of school on bad weather. My grade 8 graduation ceremony was held at Bond Head Community Hall. When they built the new Central Schools, they did not include a gym for large events. Summer seemed like work, work, and more work. I attended 4-H dairy led by Bruce Keffer and George Jackson. Swimming lessons by bus to Tottenham and Allison, which were organized by TWGHS Women's Institute. In the fall, I finally got to ride a bus to Bradford District High School, where I spent the next 4 years of my education. Community tragedies seem to always strike small communities. Johnny Crane was killed when he failed to stop at the corner of Fireside Road in 88 and drove into a moving vehicle. Tractor accident on Kerswell's Hill, Linda Culbert, and Peter Langford was hit by a drunk driver. I graduated in 1969 and was ready to do what I enjoyed most, farm. Dad, Bill, and myself started to expand the operation in 1975. A 50 by 50 addition so we could milk 60 cows. 2 silos were added and a pipeline milking system. Shortly after that, Bill decided to go out on his own farming. Too many bosses and not enough room. The same as too many cooks in the kitchen can spoil the broth. Dad and I farmed together until he decided to slow down. My family was ready to help. My dad, Joe, loved the heavy horses. He would harness a pair of perch rings up on a Saturday morning with a sleigh at tow, and off he went with the grandkids to bring a load of brown bales down from the storage barn. So much fun. He loved to haul manure with the horses in the spring of the year. I believe he would haul 40 loads every day until he almost had 400 loads out one year. Dad died at the age of 73. I'm so lucky that I got to listen to all those old stories because now I can pass them on. In 1986, Robert and Pat purchased the farm, and Joe Millie retired to the house that Robert and Pat built in 1975 on Fireside Road. Dad never really retired. The back door of the barn was always open. It was always good feeling to see him walk through, even if it was just to say, what's going on today? Bob and Pat worked hard to make the farm grow. They started breeding to registered Holsteins. Another silo was added, remodeled the barn, built a machiner's head, calf barn, and the list was endless. Farming wasn't everything. We also had 4 children, which, when the time was right, they all took their part in the farm operation, what was named Bradwood Farms. Jennifer, Robert, Brian, and Chris. There's another Robert. They all attended Soraya Mosley Public School, Bradford High School. We were active members of Trinity Anglican Church Bond Head. Summertime on the farm was Bond Head soccer and 4-H. All the children were very active in 4-H. Jennifer and Chris received their 24 project awards. Chris was also grand showperson at Beaton Fair in 1998. Rob and Brian were also achievers as 4-H members. And the senior highlight was to have a calf that would be allowed to compete in the Scotiabank Hayes Classic at the Royal Fair. Brian in 1977 achieved that goal by approaching a local farmer, Hank Vanderpost, to allow him to use a calf that Hank had purchased. The senior yearling was Belbridge Megawat Willie. With hard work and dedication, they achieved Ontario 4-H champion calf, Scotiabank Hayes Classic Championship for confirmation, and Brian finished 2nd senior showmanship. Brian was the first youth from Simcoe County to receive this award. If I let our children tell the stories, they might say music lessons were maybe boring, Soccer was only exciting when they couldn't find their socks. Skiing was a risk when Mom drove them to the ski hill. Dirt bike racing was perfect when you had a good mechanic, Rob, with a driver's license. And a night at the Arts when your brother Chris had a part in Cookstown Theatre production, Sound of Music. In 2004, developers were showing interest to purchase the farm. With two sons interested in farming, we decided to sell with agreement to retain 2-acre parcel, which included the house. The house has been deemed a historical designation with the town of TWGHS in 2024. It is a full 2-story mud block construction. There are very few, if any, left in Ontario. When it was built, it had 4 fireplaces in the main part of the house. There was also a summer kitchen on the north side with a fireplace. The house was wrapped with 3 sides with a veranda. This was one way to protect the mud blocks. It has red pine floors throughout the whole house. If only the walls could talk. Our family are present. Jennifer and her husband, Evan, live outside Barrie with Emmy and Kate. Rob and Brian and their families run their separate farming operations in Durham region near Cannington. Rob and Tanya with Alistair and James have a 200-acre farm with 60-cow tie-stall barn. Brian and Marty and Maeve and Alec have a 200-acre operation with a new robotic barn. Sadly, in 2005, Christopher Bradley passed away. In 2018, the Wood family was awarded 150 years of farming in Ontario through the Durham Federation of Agriculture.
Nice.
The Wood family is proud to say there's been 7 generations live in the town of TWG. And the name Robert has continued 6 times in 7 generations. The red pine floors are not worn out yet. This is Robert Wood's obituary. On the early morning of the last day of the year, in a great peace, there passed off the stage of action one of the nature's noblemen in the person of the late Robert Wood, at esteemed and loved by all who were fortunate enough to know him. Close relationship with him. Up until a few months ago, Mr. Wood seemed quite vigorous, though in his 83rd year, and seemed to have vitality enough to add quite a few more years to his life. But he had protected illness and death of his son-in-law, William Martin, followed so soon by the death of his son Joseph, were events sufficient to try the strength of any father who had his strong feelings and affection for members of his family. The test proved too severe, and he took a heart attack. On Christmas night, when retiring, he complained of feeling very tired, and on Monday the doctor was called. He found symptoms of pneumonia, which added to the weakness of the heart, soon producing a fatal result. And on the morning of the new year, the gloom and sadness was cast over the entire community when the flag in front of the family residence was seen flying at half-mast, announcing what the hand and heart, which always went out in friendship and hospitality, were cold in death. The funeral on the January 2nd was very largely attended. Many prominent men from all over the parts of the county and city of Toronto were present to pay last tribute to the respect to one they had so long known and loved. Deceased was born in the county of Cavan in Ireland and left the land of his birth for Canada in the year of 1846. He brought with him a healthy and vigorous mind, body at once pliable to overcome the difficulties which were then so numerous to new settlers. Deceased was married twice, first to Miss Susie Fennell, daughter of the late John Fennell, by whom he had a large family, 5 who are still alive today. The oldest being the esteemed Reeve of West Gorenberg, his second wife, to whom he was married in 1872, Miss Maria Thompson of Tecumseh, whom he had a son and daughter, and still living with their mother and Miss Jenny Wood in the old house. By industry and frugality, and very well assisted by his esteemed wife and family, Mr. Wood had become one of the most independent men in the township. He was a conservative in politics and a member of the liberal supporter of the English church. But he esteemed men for their manualness and not for their creed. The death of Mr. Wood leaves a blank in the circle of his acquaintance, and which would be very hard to fill. His familiar figure, straight as an arrow, will be much missed and long mourned. As a neighbor, he had no superior, always ready to oblige and anxious to see everyone successful in their own efforts to get along in the world. The funeral service was conducted by the Reverend Mr. Morley, Reverend Mr. Watt, and Reverend Mr. Patterson. Farewell, old friend. It will be very long before we look on your life again. Written by Zachariah Evans, a neighbor.
Any questions for Bob? Well, I have one question.
Okay.
You said there was a family member
Yep.
that after they moved off the farm, they lived in a house across the street from you.
My grandparents lived right across the street for 10 years.
Which house? Ann's house?
Ann Burnham's.
And Merman's house, okay. Now, did they own it, or?
Yes, they owned it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I can remember being there as a boy.
Oh, excellent, okay. Oh, we have another question, Bob.
Bob, were you related to the famous Ken Wood in Bradford?
Yes.
Was
Just
he
different. Pardon me?
an uncle or?
No, just another branch. His father was Jim Wood.
And why is he famous?
He collected.
He was the Reeve, wasn't he?
He was the Reeve. No, I think he was just a counselor,
Oh,
and he collected old cars. He had quite a few old cars stored in the barn.
his house is still.
His house is still
in
standing.
Bradford. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yes, and 4 of Robert's sons, 4 of the farms are all built on today. And John's farm was where the leisure center is now. He had 200 acres, went from 88 to the 8 point.
Wow, gratitude.
Just say 2 more words.
Yes, do. Yeah. Please.
I had lots of help with this. I had my wife of 53 years, she did most of the work. All I did was write it out. She
Yeah.
did the research. And my granddaughter came down. She's a recent graduate of Brock University, and she did all put the stuff on,
Oh,
did all
presentation together.
Yes.